Dracula Awakens is an interesting short horror experience that sees you take on the role of a journalist trying to investigate a murder deep within Dracula's castle. The only issue is that Dracula himself is still alive along with his missus, or his wife, and you'll find early elements of the game with Dracula's servants. You find out in the story that Dracula decides to kill and eliminate all of his servants for a different cause. So you'll find out that this is where the story takes fold, where you're sent in to investigate the disappearances of these people, but you quickly realise that all is not well, as not only is the castle inhabited by the Dark Lord himself, but you also have to deal with otherworldly creatures, with ghosts and other paranormal spirits that haunt the hallways and rooms. But you also have to contend with solving puzzles to unlock different areas, to gain access to keys or other pieces in order to venture further into the castle. Now, the game plays from a first person perspective and uses a low poly style very similar to classic survival horror games. So you can imagine this being on the PlayStation 1, it would have been very reflective of that period, as it has all of the typical low res textures and warped backgrounds and all of those elements that really add a distinct appeal to the game and the narrative that it presents, because it's not just the monsters that really affect you in a way, it's the fact is that the environments around you do feel like they're alive in some shape or form. Now, because you're dealing with paranormal entities, you're very limited in terms of how you can defend yourself. The only really ways of being able to get away from things is to run or to use religious type items like crosses, and you do have access to a camera that you'll need in order to dispose of a lot of the spirits. Now, the camera will really be of no use to you against Dracula or his wife itself, but the likes of the crosses and religious items will help to keep those threats at bay to a degree until you can progress through the story. Now, it's interesting in what it tries to do. I do like the visual style of it. It's very reflective of that whole era of classic survival horror. They will take you from like the castle grounds to gardens, various dark rooms, even down to basements and catacombs, which are very dark and atmospheric. And the game does present multiple endings depending on various choices or things that you do within. The one thing I will say is that the puzzles themselves can be quite tricky to understand, as they're not always as distinctive or apparent to figure out in the beginning. I even found time from playing even the demo that I was playing, looking for references. I had to go online, and even with that, there's very few videos available that show you really what to do. So if you can't figure out the puzzles themselves the way they're intended to be, you probably will struggle with it. I found myself getting stumped a lot in this game, because I find with a lot of these games, while the puzzles themselves are very good and very well thought out, for the average casual gamer you will struggle with it because it's not as noticeable in what you should do, which will confuse you. But it's interesting. I really like the atmosphere, I really like the environments, but it is tough because especially when the likes of Dracula and his wife starts chasing after you, they can move so fast. Even when you do try to run away, it can be very, very tricky. But you always have to be mindful of your surroundings, because you never know where threats can linger from. But if you do like first person survival horror games, and especially shorter experiences, there's no harm in having a look with this one. Right, it's not the best one out there, but it definitely presents a unique take and takes a lot of inspiration from games of old, but tries to put it into its own unique experience, which it does do a good job here. And even from the results on the Steam page, it did get positive reviews, so people do like it for those that have played it, so it might be worth a look. With that being said, there are a lot of other games like this that are starting to crop up that are based off of older games or taking references from classic survival horror experiences that are definitely worth a look also, which you can check out here in this next video.